public speaking today. We're going to look at a couple persuasive speeches. So one, a motivational speech from Al Pacino in the movie Any Given Sunday, and then a judicial closing argument from Viola Davis and How to Get Away with Murder. So we want to talk more about persuasion, more about public speaking, this section of the class. Do you all have any questions about the class so far or anything coming up? Perfect. So I pulled this from the book. I think it's good advice about making speeches. One, explain your message early. Introduce what you want to talk about. Stay focused to that message. 2, explain why your message is needed. 3, help your audience visualize what should be done. So I want to think about these 3 things. Think about ethos, pathos, and logos that we talked about Wednesday. And just anything else that comes up when we watch these 2 speeches again. Take some notes so you guys can contribute to the discussion and just whether or not this speech is persuasive and how it is persuasive. If you can connect it to something we've been talking about in class, that's great. If you're like, I just like the way he or she said this, that's great too. And if you don't think it's persuasive, that's great also. I just want to hear why. Carlos, do you mind to turn off the lights? They're right by the door. This speech has some bad language in it, so I apologize in advance if that offends anyone. It's not over the top, just a couple times.
I don't know what to say, really. 3 minutes for the biggest battle of our professional lives. All comes down to today. And either we heal as a team, or we're going to crumble. Inch by inch, play by play, till we're finished. We're in hell right now, gentlemen. Believe me. And we can stay here, get the shit kicked out of us, or we can fight our way back into the light. We can climb out of hell. 1 inch at a time. Now, I can't do it for you. I'm too old. I look around, I see these young faces, and I think, I made every wrong choice a middle-aged man can make. I pissed away all my money, believe it or not. I chased off anyone who's ever loved me. And lately, I can't even stand the face I see in the mirror. You know, when you get old in life, things get taken from you. That's part of life. But you only learn that when you start losing stuff. You find out life's this game of inches. So is football. Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. 1/2 a step too late or too early, and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us. They're in every break of the game, every minute, every second. On this team, we fight for that inch. On this team, we tear ourselves and everyone else around us to pieces for that inch. We claw with our fingernails for that inch. Because we know when we add up all those inches, that's gonna make the fucking difference between winning and losing. Between living and dying. I'll tell you this, in any fight, the guy who's willing to die who's gonna win that itch. And I know if I'm gonna have any life anymore, it's because I'm still willing to fight and die for that itch. Because that's what living is. There's 6 inches in front of your face. Now I can't make you do it. You gotta look at the guy next to you. Look into his eyes. Now I think you're gonna see a guy who will go that inch with you. You're gonna see a guy who will sacrifice himself for this team because he knows when it comes down to it, you're gonna do the same for him. That's a team, gentlemen. And either we heal now as a team, or we will die as individuals. That's football, guys. That's all it is. Now, what are you gonna do?
All right. For the record, I don't expect anyone to give a speech like some of the best actors and actresses of all time, who also have like incredible script writers writing these speeches for them. But I do think we can learn some things about persuasion from both of the speeches we're looking at today. Did you all find this to be a persuasive speech? Cool. Let's, anything at all that you all noticed that Al Pacino was doing? His words, his body language. Yeah, Carlos.
He was like pumping the team up, basically, like getting them ready for the fight.
Yeah. What are some ways he was doing that?
He was using some words that were like, I guess, turn them up.
Yeah. Can you think of any like specific words that they seem to be reacting to, or? Yeah, no worries. Thanks for starting the conversation. What else? Yeah, Dara.
So you talked a lot about like fighting and putting yourself on the line, and then towards the end, like about how it's about your teammates as well.
Yeah, and that
relying on them.
That was really like helping visualize, right, what they need to do, and bringing it down to something as small as an inch, looking someone in the eye, like good, but also as big as life. What else? Yeah.
He was vulnerable with sharing his perspective of life and then comparing it to the game and how they can grow in the game and in life, but pushing them to do that by like encouraging them to dig deeper, fight back.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I really like this speech and the way he develops his ethos as he's vulnerable. He's not saying, I'm this perfect guy and you should be like me. He's like, no, I've made a lot of mistakes and you should not be like me. Good. Anything else? What about like his body language, his tone? Yeah.
I think at first he was really timid to speak about or speak at all, and like as the speech went on, like he got more and more enthusiastic with his words and his expressions.
Yeah, at one point he's like, we got a claw, and he's got his hands up there like that, right? Good. Anything else y'all want to talk about from this speech and how he persuaded his team? It's on YouTube as the best sports speech, so I don't know. It's all relative, but I thought it was a good one. Good. All right, so let's watch Miss Viola Davis give her closing argument and think about some of these same questions and whether or not she's persuasive.
492,750. That's how many minutes Nathaniel Leahy, my client, spent in a cement box smaller than a parking space. Now the prosecution claims that Nathaniel's time in solitary did not make him insane, even though a neutral court-appointed doctor testified that it did. Not to mention numerous studies that prove that solitary confinement causes severe psychological disorders. The facts of the case are clear. Nathaniel Leahy went into solitary confinement for less than a year, and just days after he got out, he did something he'd never done before. He snapped, exploded. He lost his mind. Now, if you still don't think that that can happen, then I want you to put yourself in his shoes for 1 minute. Just a fraction of the time that he spent there. Here. $492,750 minutes. And all we heard was this.
Great. Same question. Was this speech persuasive? Yeah. Great. What is Viola Davis doing that's making her case? Yeah, Junior.
She like went into that little story thing. She was giving like visualization.
Yeah.
What the guy went through. Like,
Yeah.
what drove him crazy.
What a good example of using a visual with what's available to you too in a courtroom. Working within that constraint. You can't bring the jury necessarily to a cell, but you can tape out on the floor. But what else? Yeah.
When she was like silent, she was just like looking at the jury and right in their eyes, so it like resonated with them.
Yeah, that worked with the visualization too, experiencing that silence, that discomfort. It was kind of ruined because they were like vacuuming out in the hall, but it's different, and it's different on TV too, to really let that moment go. I think seeing that film, good. What else? Did she use facts, studies, other sources? Yeah. She cited multiple studies that show that solitary confinement causes insanity. She cited a neutral expert, right? So she's using emotion and facts in studies. Because that's hard to convince people to, if this guy, he killed someone. And she's trying to reach the jury to, it'll have major effects on his life, and that might be a harder thing to convince someone to let someone off for insanity or whatever than it is to convince a football team to play harder. The audience there is different, right? We'll kind of keep thinking about this. Anything else you all want to bring up of this? Yeah.
Yeah, she said the amount of time he spent there in minutes versus like hours, days, whatever.
Yeah.
Just because it's like a larger number, and it's harder to kind of process that.
Yeah, that's a great example of just like word choice, saying the same thing in a different way to make it more impactful. Good job. All right, great. Anything else? So, every rhetorical situation has these 4 things. This is from chapter 2, I think. First, exigence. Can anyone tell us what exigence is? rhetoric people like to use really fancy words, but this means the problem you're trying to solve. The caveat for exigence is there must be a solution. So the book used this example. It's a good one. There's no point in arguing it should only rain on cornfields, because you cannot, no one can go and physically only make it rain on a cornfield, right? But you could make the argument that tennis matches should be canceled when it rains due to players getting injuries. Does that make sense? So just thinking of your argument, making sure there's actually something that can be done. Do you all remember what a rhetor is? Yeah, Carlos.
Kind of like be persuasive, like, I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah. So the rhetor, in this case, it's just a fancy way of saying the speaker. And then rhetoric will be the art of persuasion. So good. Same idea, but yeah, you'll just see this. It just means the speaker. Again, that has an effect on the speech. You know, Al Pacino's like can really give in that kind of, I've had a rough life, I've made a lot of mistakes, that like works with his character and his voice and his appearance. You know, there's probably a reason they picked that actor. Same way there's a reason they picked Viola Davis for this role. And she can look very polished and professional and bring in these statistics while also just kind of command the room. Good. Audience. We all kind of know what an audience is. The book brings up an important point that thinking about writing an argument to a general audience isn't that productive, just because any given group of people is going to have such widely different ideas, pre-existing beliefs. So the book says to really think about a target audience to reach with your argument. In Viola Davis' case, you know, she's really looking for those juries that can have empathy for a murderer. Make them tap into that empathy. Some people, they'll just never get there, and she won't reach them, but she might flip a few people's mind. Constraints. So we talked about constraints on Wednesday. As far as genre, a constraint just means anything that affects the argument that is not the rhetor, so the speaker, or the audience. So a constraint could be genre, like we talked about. It could be social, political climate. Like if you're writing a press release, you're gonna write it one way, versus if you're writing a novel. That's a constraint that you work within for the form. Any questions on this? Great. So we're gonna do a little activity. I'm gonna turn the light back on. So I want us to go around the room and count off 1, 2, 3, split into a group. You all aren't actually splitting into groups, but you'll see. So hopefully you've done something like this in high school. If junior, you can just start off with 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Does that make sense? And just count out loud.
So let's do 1.
1, yeah, 1,
3. 1. 2. 1.
Although back on those.
1, 2.
1, 2. Great. So remember your number. This is an argument that I want you all to make. So social media should be banned for anyone under the age of 18. If you're in group 1, you need to make this argument to Tech Travis, he's 32 years old. He's an expert with social media. He's employed by TikTok. He is hostile to this argument. He does not believe TikTok should be banned to people under 18. Ignore these names. I told you all at the beginning I work as a copywriter, and when I get content briefs from my boss, when I have to write something, they literally look like this. Like, she makes up personas, and I think it's really funny, so I tried to do the same. Gen Z Jillian. So if you're group number 2, you're writing to Jillian. She's 17, so this will actually affect her. She's a user of social media, and she is hostile to this argument. She does not want to give up her social media. If you're number 3, you have old school. Owen, he's 48. He doesn't use social media. He's not familiar with it. He's very open to it being banned for people under 18. He's not a fan. So take your target audience. I want you all to write a tweet making this argument, and I want you all to write an email making this argument. So I'm going to give you all 10 minutes to do this, and then we're going to need an example from each group before we get the homework and go home. So if you haven't participated yet today, that's a good chance to do so. Does that make sense to everybody, what we're doing?